The sun was hot and cruel above the dry road. The wind blew dust across the cracked ground. Ravaka walked slowly, her feet bleeding, her arms trembling as she held her daughter close to her chest. The girl's body was too light, too still, like a doll made of bones and silence. Traders passed by in loud trucks, their engines roaring like wild animals. None of them stopped. None of them looked. Ravaka was just another broken thing by the side of the road. Her lips were dry, and her eyes stung from the heat. She had not eaten in 2 days. Her daughter hadn't spoken since last night. The girl's small head rested against her shoulder with no strength. A rusty sign swung in the wind ahead. A tiny outpost. Maybe someone there would help, Ravaka forced, her legs forward. The ground tilted in her vision, but she kept walking. She had to. She reached the outpost and stood outside the food shack. Her voice cracked when she spoke. "Please, something to eat. Anything, my child. She's sick. We just need a little help." The alien vendor inside the shack narrowed his eyes. "Get out of here, widow," he growled. "You're bad luck. No one wants to feed a dying thing." Ravaka clutched her daughter tighter and stepped back. Her hands were shaking. People nearby turned their heads and whispered. She heard words like curse, useless, contaminated. Duh. One woman threw a piece of trash near her feet. "Your kind should have died with the war." Ravaka couldn't speak. She lowered her eyes, trying to hide the tears. Her daughter gave a small cough, then went limp. Rivaka's knees buckled, and she fell to the ground. Her body curling around the girl like a broken shell. The wind screamed across the road again. Then a new sound came, a soft footstep, slow and steady. A human man stood nearby wearing old travel, boots and a dusty jacket. His face was tired, but his eyes were clear. He didn't say anything at first. He just looked at the mother and child on the ground. Then he knelt. He opened his pack and took out a small ration, bar nothing fancy. Dried grains and protein. He placed it gently near Rivaka's hand. Rivaka flinched and pulled her daughter closer. "Why?" she whispered. The man shrugged. "'Cause you need it." She stared at him. "You'll get nothing in return," she said. "I didn't ask." "For anything?" he replied. Her hands hovered over the food, unsure. The man stood up and looked at the angry vendor. "Shame on you," he said loud enough for the others to hear. "You all saw her fall. You saw her beg, and you did nothing." Crowd looked away. The vendor said nothing. The man walked away and sat near his parked bike under the shade of a tree. Ravaka watched him. No one had stood up for her in years. No one had given her anything without expecting something dark in return. Her daughter stirred and gave a tiny moan. That was enough. Ravaka opened the food and broke it into small pieces. She fed the child. First, carefully, then took a bite herself. The taste was dry and bitter, but it felt like hope. Minutes passed. The outpost went quiet. Ravaka stood up slowly. She carried her daughter to the tree where the man sat. He looked up. "She okay?" Ravaka nodded. "She's still breathing, thanks to you." He offered her a small flask of water. "Drink here." Both half dead, Ravaka hesitated again, then took it. She drank only a little and gave the rest to her daughter. "Name's Jace," the man said. "I'm heading west, Ravaka," she replied. "We have nowhere to go." He leaned back and looked at the sky. "Then maybe you should come with me." Ravaka blinked. "Why?" He looked at her daughter, then at her. "No one should die alone in the dirt. It's not while I'm passing by." Ravaka didn't answer. She sat beside him, holding her daughter tight, just watching the wind move across the sand. For the first time in a long while, she didn't feel completely invisible, and for the first time since her mate died, she felt a flicker of something warm, something that almost felt like safety. Asterisk, the sun went down behind the rocky hills, but the heat still clung to the earth like a heavy coat. The stars came out one by one, and the wind picked up, colder now, blowing sharp across the sand. Ravaka sat on a hard stone, her back to the fire Jace had made. Her daughter lay beside her, asleep and wrapped tightly in something soft. That softness made her turn. It was a thick human blanket gray, patched in places, but warm and clean. Had the smell of old travel, firewood, and dust, but it didn't belong to her. Jace sat across from them, arms crossed, head tilted back, eyes closed like he was trying to forget something. "You gave your blanket to my daughter," Ravaka said quietly. He didn't open his eyes. "She needed it more than I do." "But the wind is cold," she said. "You'll freeze. I've had worse." Ravaka looked at the sleeping child, then back at the human. No one had ever given something without asking for something else. "Not in years." "What are you doing, Jace?" she asked. "What do you want from us?" He finally opened his eyes. "I want to make sure you both make it through the night." That answer made her feel something strange inside, something small and warm, but dangerous. She didn't want to trust it. He stood and walked away from the fire. He pulled an old canvas sheet from his bag and sat against a large rock, his body shivering as the night grew colder. Ravaka looked around. The desert was quiet now, only the fire crackling and the soft breathing of her child. Still, she didn't sleep. She sat awake, watching Jace from the corner of her eye. He shifted now and then, pulling his arms tighter around himself. She remembered how her mate used to do that before the war took everything. The desert wasn't kind to the weak. Kindness itself had become rare, suspicious, dangerous, near midnight. A noise broke the silence. Soft cough from her daughter. Then again, louder. Ravaka moved quickly, holding her close. The girl's skin felt too warm. Breathing was shallow. "She's burning up," Ravaka said in a panic. Jace stood and came over, still holding the edge of the canvas around himself. He dropped beside them, feeling the child's forehead. "She needs rest, water, and warmth," he said. "More than this fire can give." "What do we do?" Ravaka asked, voice shaking. Jace pulled off his jacket and added it to the blanket. "I'll take first watch," he said. "You get some sleep. If I see anything or hear anything, I'll wake you." Ravaka stared at him, confused. "Why are you doing this? We're not your responsibility." Jace looked at her daughter again. "I lost someone once," he said. "She had no one left. I didn't act in time." His voice cracked, but he didn't cry. He just turned back to the fire, silent now. Ravaka felt her chest tighten. She lowered her head, placed her hand gently on her daughter's cheek, and whispered, "Stay strong." Hours passed. The stars moved slowly. Ravaka drifted off, her body finally giving in to the exhaustion. When she woke, the sun was just touching the edge of the rocks. Her daughter was still sleeping, breathing easier now, but Jace was gone. Panic surged through her. She stood quickly, eyes scanning the empty land. Then she saw him walking back from a small hill, holding something wrapped in cloth. "What is that?" she asked. "Caught a sandbird," he said, breathless. "They nest in that ridge. Not much meat, but it'll help." He unwrapped the cloth. The small bird was already skinned and cleaned. He moved to start the fire again. Ravaka stared at him. "You hunted for us." "I hunted for all three of us," he corrected. "Haven't eaten either." That was when she realized he never even touched his own ration bar. The day before, everything had gone to her and her child. As the flames rose, Ravaka sat beside him without a word. For the first time, she didn't feel afraid of this human. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but right now, under the rising sun, they were alive, and that was enough. The crowd began to gather, fast and loud. As the alien vendor pointed straight at her and screamed, "She stole it! Someone stop her now!" Ravaka stood frozen, her hands up, her daughter clinging to her side, eyes wide and scared. Small Market Square smelled of oil, heat, and old fruit. It was supposed to be a short stop, just a chance to trade the last valuable item she had left. A small blue jewel hidden deep in her sash. She had used it once before in another city. Long ago, but here, the moment the vendor saw it, his eyes narrowed. "You didn't buy this?" he shouted. "This is stolen, from my people, from my land." Ravaka tried to speak. "It was a gift from my mate before he died. I swear, it's mine." But he wasn't listening. More people turned to look. Whispers turned to murmurs, then to judgment. "Look at her clothes. A widow again. They always lie." Ravaka's daughter began to cry, but softly. Trying not to draw more attention, A tall alien man stepped forward from the crowd. His uniform showed he was part of local security. "If you have no proof, we'll hold you until the matter is cleared." Ravaka's hand shook. She knew what that meant. They'd take her child away first. They'd say it was for safety. She had heard stories of other widows never seeing their children again. She backed away, but there was no space left. The crowd had closed in. Then a strong voice cut through the noise. "She didn't steal it." He stepped forward, calm, but firm, moving between Rivaka and the vendor. "She's not a thief. She's a mother. You should be ashamed." The vendor's eyes burned. "This isn't your business, human." Jace pulled out a small pouch and dropped it on the table. Inside were 6 hard-earned credits, enough to buy a week's food. "This cover it?" The vendor stared at the pouch, then snatched it fast, like a rat finding cheese. "Fine," he muttered. "But you'll regret this, human." The crowd slowly started to move. Most looked away now, bored. Jace turned to Rivaka. "Let's go." Rivaka didn't move. Her breath was stuck in her chest. He took her hand not in control, but in support and gently pulled her away from the stall. They walked out of the market, down a side path, until the voices behind them faded. Rivaka stopped and turned to face him. "You gave him everything." "Why would you do that? Because you were about to lose her," he said, looking at her daughter. "And I don't like bullies." She lowered her eyes. "I told you not to follow us, and I told you I'm not letting you wander into the desert alone again." "I have nothing to give you," she said. "No value, no future, no place." Jace shrugged. "Good thing I'm not looking for treasure." Rivaka looked up, her eyes meeting his. She didn't understand this human. Why was he helping? "Did he see in her? Where do you come from?" she asked. He glanced toward the hills. Used to be a mechanic in the border colonies. Worked with engines, gates, little things. Then, war happened. Lost my crew, my home, everything. After that, I just kept moving. "Why not stop?" he chuckled. "Maybe I was waiting for something to make me stop." They kept walking until they reached an old fuel station, now abandoned. Jace checked inside, clear and quiet. They sat down under the broken roof. Rivaka placed her daughter on a soft patch of dust. The girl was asleep again. Jace pulled a broken metal box from the back wall and dug inside. After a moment, he held up a small heating coil. "We might get this working," he said. "Cook something decent." Rivika leaned against the wall, tired. "You should have saved your credits," she whispered. Jace looked at her. "I didn't spend them. I used them." There's a difference. The words hit something deep inside her. All her life, people had taken her family, her tribe, her mate. But this man, this human, gave again and again without taking anything back. For the first time, she didn't tell him to leave. She simply closed her eyes and whispered, "Thank you." Rivaka dropped to her knees and clawed at the hard ground beside the dried-up well. Blood dripping from her fingers, the skin split and rode, but still, no water came out. Jace rushed forward and grabbed her hands. "Stop. You're hurting yourself," she shook her head and pulled away. "She needs it, she needs water. She can't survive another night without it." Her daughter lay under a scrap of cloth in the shade of a broken wall. The child's lips were cracked, breathing was shallow, too slow, too quiet. They had walked 2 days to reach this forgotten supply point, deep in the old mining hills. On the map Jace found, it showed a water source marked as active. But when they got there, the stone well was dry, covered in dust, and cracked from time. Jace stood and circled the well. He knocked gently on the sides, listening for echo. Then he pulled out his old multi-tool and began scraping at the edge. "I think it's blocked," he said. "It's not dry. It's just sealed at the base." Rivaka watched him. Her hands were shaking, her nails broken. "Then we dig," she said. Now, Jace didn't argue. He pulled out a bent metal rod from his pack and started hammering at the lower wall. The work was slow. Each strike sent dust flying. But he kept going, sweat pouring down his face, his muscles burning. Hours passed. The sun climbed higher. Finally, with one hard strike, the rod broke through. A sharp hiss came from the base of the well. Then a sound like a cyanide water began to bubble up, slow at first, then steady, then fast. Revoca gasped. Jay stepped back as cold, clean water poured into the stone circle. She didn't wait. She grabbed her metal cup and filled it. She ran to her daughter and gently poured the water into her mouth, little by little. The child stirred, then coughed, then drank. Revoca cried. Not from sadness, but from relief. JC smiled and leaned against the wall, but then his eyes went wide. A loud click came from behind them. Something metal moved. He turned and saw an old defense bot unfolding from the shadow of the well's roof. Rusty, but armed. Its red eye blinked awake. Defense protocol active, the bot said in a broken voice. Unauthorized access detected. Jace grabbed Revoca and pushed her down. Get her behind the wall, go, the bot's gun arm raised. Aiming at the center of the well, JSE ran sideways, trying to draw its aim. The bot tracked him and fired 1, 2, 3 blasts. Dirt exploded near his feet. He dove behind a broken cart. Revoca held her daughter tight and watched in horror. The bot turned again, searching. Its voice crackled. Return stolen water. Jace pulled out a smoke flare from his belt and tossed it high. It landed near the bot and hissed, spraying dark blue smoke in the air. He ran through the cloud, straight at the bot holding the bent metal rod. 1 strike, 2 sparks flew. The bot swiped at him with its claw arm. It caught his side, ripping his jacket. Blood showed under the cloth, but he didn't stop. He drove the rod deep into the bot's power cord, just under the neck. A blast of heat surged out. The bot shuddered, then collapsed with a heavy thud. The smoke cleared. Jace stood breathing hard, chest rising and falling. His shirt was torn, blood on his side. But he was alive. Revoca ran to him. You're bleeding, she said, panic in her voice. It's not deep, he said, wincing. Just stings a little. You didn't have to fight it. You could have died. He looked at her. And let your daughter die of thirst. Not a chance. Revoca stared at him, unsure what to say. This wasn't her world anymore. In her world, people let others die. In her world, no one bled for strangers. She helped him sit near the well. Oh. She cleaned the wound with water, then wrapped it with cloth from her own sleeve. He smiled at her. You're a better healer than you let on. I'm a mother, she said quietly. Mothers learn to do everything. The girl slept better that night, her face no longer pale, and Revoca, as she sat near Jace under the stars, looked at him with something new in her eyes, something close to trust. The sky turned black in seconds. Winds howled like monsters. Winneska screamed as the sand tore through her clothes. Her daughter slipped from her grip, and she could barely see anything. Just grabbed both of them, pulling hard against the wind. His voice lost in the roar of the desert storm. Behind them, the landscape disappeared. There was no road, no trail, no light. Just walls of sand spinning like fire. Revoca wrapped her arms around her daughter's tiny body and leaned into Jace's back, letting him guide them forward through the storm. She couldn't see where they were going, only that they had to. Keep moving this way, Jace shouted, pointing toward a dark shape rising through the dust. A rusted metal door stood half buried under sand, its edges bent but still solid. He slammed his shoulder into it until it cracked open, then pushed them inside. The storm roared behind them as the door closed with a loud thud. Silence returned like a slap. Revoca collapsed to the floor, coughing, her hair filled with sand. Her daughter clung to her chest, eyes wide, heart racing. Jace fell to his knees, catching his breath. We made it, he said, voice low. They were inside an old shelter hidden deep in the sand dunes. Walls of cracked stone, broken crates, and old war tools lay scattered across the floor. Revoca looked around. What is this place? Old soldier post, Jace said. I found it years ago while repairing Cum's units. No one uses it anymore. She held her daughter tighter. I thought we were going to die out there. Jace leaned against the wall, pulling off his jacket. You were right to panic. That storm came fast. Revoca's hands trembled as she checked her daughter's pulse. It was strong, She was safe. For now, Jace lit a small fire in a metal drum. The warmth spread slowly. Ravaka moved closer and sat beside it, silent. Minutes passed. The wind screamed outside, but the thick walls held firm. Jace looked at her. "You're shaking." "I'm not cold," she replied. I'm remembering he didn't ask. He just waited. She stared into the fire. "Last time I was in a place like this, my mate was still alive. We hid in a bunker when the first wave hit, held my hand and told me we'd survive." Lied. "He left to find food. He never came back." Jace didn't speak. He just looked at her, his face soft. "I waited 3 days," she said, her voice low. "My daughter cried until her voice broke. Then we left. We walked until our feet bled. No one helped us. Not until you." Jace poked at the fire with a stick. "You don't owe me anything, Ravoka. Not your story, not your thanks." She turned to him, her eyes full of pain. "Then why do you help us? What are you carrying inside you that makes you do this?" He looked down. "There was a girl," he said. "Before the war? She was young, alone. I had supplies, but I was afraid. I didn't share. I told myself someone else would help her. She died that night. I buried her the next morning."
Us?
Breath caught. "I swore I'd never turn away again," he said. "If I see someone in need, I help, even if I have nothing left." Ravoka reached for his hand. Not because she had to, but because she wanted to. He let her. They sat in silence for a while, listening to the fire crackle. Her daughter slept peacefully, wrapped in Jace's jacket and blanket. Later, Rivaka looked around the shelter and found an old food crate. Inside were a few sealed packs, dry grain and root biscuits. She brought them to the fire. "Looks like the soldiers left a gift for the future." Jace smiled. "Let's not waste it." They ate together, quietly, slowly. Rivaka chewed carefully, feeling warmth fill her body not just from the food or the fire, but from the presence of someone who had become more than just a stranger. He had become a reason to believe again. When she lay down beside her daughter that night, Rivaka whispered, "We're going to live. Do you hear me, little one? We're going to live." And for the first time in weeks, she meant it. Asterix, the sound of engines echoed over the hills in Rivaka. Froze mid-step, she knew that sound. And it didn't belong to traitors. Jace heard it too. He turned his head, scanning the wide sand ridge ahead. The noise was steady, heavy, and getting closer. They had left the old storm shelter just hours ago. The sky was calm now, the air cooler, and their spirits a little stronger. But as the ground began to hum beneath their feet, Ravoka's hand tightened on her daughter's wrist. "That's not cargo traffic," she whispered. "That's patrol tackled class, but fast." Jace raised his scope and looked toward the horizon. 3 sandbikes and a scout buggy were racing across the flats, leaving thick trails of dust behind. They weren't scanning for danger. They were hunting. "Someone's tracking us," he said. Rivaka's face lost all color. "They're from VAHR is... my old city. They take back runaways." "You told me your caste disbanded," Jace said, loading his sidearm. "It did. But widows are still considered property-broken things that must be returned and recycled. I'm worth a penalty if they catch me, and my daughter even more." Jace didn't flinch. He looked back at the rocky slope behind them. "There's an old drop shaft. It leads to the canyon base. Can lose them in there if we move fast." "No," Ravoka said, her voice sharp. "They'll follow you. You'll be hunted." Jace stepped closer, and we make it hard for them. Picked up her daughter gently and strapped his old mask to the girl's face. "She rides with me. You lead us to that shaft." Ravoka hesitated, fear twisting in her gut. She wanted to run, to hide, to disappear, but this man had fought for them, bled for them. She nodded. They moved quickly, feet pounding the sand, dust rising in small clouds behind them. The sound of engines roared louder, a warning shot fired. Over their heads, Jace didn't stop, turned sharply and dove behind a boulder, keeping the child tucked under his arm. Ravoka ducked beside him, her heart racing. The patrol riders closed in, faces hidden behind mirrored helmets, weapons raised, JACE. Pulled out an old sonic mine and set it to a 5-second timer. He looked at Rivka. Cover your ears. She grabbed her daughter and did what he said. The mine pulsed once, then exploded not in fire, but in sound. A wave of force knocked the lead rider off his bike. The other two swerved hard to avoid. The fall, Jace didn't wait. Go, he yelled. They sprinted toward the rock edge, where the drop shaft lay half buried under vines and old gear. Rivka jumped in first, sliding fast down the slope, landing with a thud into the dark canyon floor. Jace followed, lowering the child carefully into her arms. Above them, shouts rang out. The patrol had stopped. For now, Jace looked up and placed a metal charge near the shaft's edge. He tapped it once, stepped back, then triggered it. A burst of sand and rock collapsed over the shaft entrance, sealing it behind them. Darkness swallowed them for a moment. Quiet, still, and deep. Rivka sat down, shaking. Her daughter was safe, breathing, eyes open, and watching. Jace stood beside her, hands on his knees, panting. You didn't have to do that, she said softly. Yes, I did, he answered. I told you they wouldn't stop if they knew I escaped. I know. You're marked now. They'll come. For you two, Jace smiled faintly in the dark. Then they'll find I'm not so easy to catch. She stared at him, not as a stranger anymore. Not even as a rescuer, but as someone who was choosing to suffer for her sake. You don't even know what I am, she said. You're a mother. You're brave. You kept your daughter alive when no one else would lift a hand. That's all I need to know. Rivka leaned back against the rock wall. Her chest felt tight, but not from fear this time, from something heavier. Deeper. I thought all the good men died with the war, she whispered. JC didn't answer. He just sat down beside her and rested his head against the stone. And in the quiet that followed, the only sound was her daughter's soft breathing and the heartbeat they now shared in the darker heartbeat of survival. God, of trust, and something dangerously close to love. Jace collapsed onto the sand, his hands shaking, lips cracked, face pale. He hadn't eaten in 2 days. And now there was nothing left in his pack. Rivka dropped beside him, her daughter wrapped tight in her arms. You didn't tell me you. We're starving, she whispered, panic rising in her chest. I'm fine, Jace muttered, trying to sit up, but his arms gave out. Just tired, that's all. But she could see the truth. His ribs showed clearly through his shirt. His skin had lost its color. His voice sounded distant. They had crossed the canyon by foot, walking for hours without stopping. No food. Water. No shelter. The sun had been high the whole way, and Jace had given the last of their supplies to Rivka and her daughter. You gave us everything, she said. And you didn't keep even one bite for yourself. Jace didn't answer. He had already passed out. Rivka looked around. They were close to the border zone now. A rusted sign marked the edge of a human trade post half a mile ahead. It was their only chance. She laid Jace gently on the ground and kissed her daughter's forehead. Stay here, she said. Don't move. Mama's coming back. She ran barefoot across the sand, every step burning, her lungs aching. She pushed through the gate of the post, her voice cracking as she cried out, Help! Please, he's dying. He gave us his food, saved our lives. Someone help him. A tall man in a faded uniform stepped out from behind a stall. He took one look at her and shouted back toward the building, medic now. Others rushed out. A human woman with a first aid kit. 2 workers carrying water jugs. Rivka led them back. Jace was still lying in the dust, motionless, lips barely moving. The medic dropped beside him, opened his mouth, and gave him water slowly. She checked his pulse, pressed something against his neck, and nodded. He's weak, but he'll live, she said. You got him here just in time. Rivka let out a breath she didn't realize she was holding. Later, after they moved Jason to a cool tent, Rivka sat by his side. Her daughter curled up beside her, now resting in peace. Jace opened his eyes, blinking at the soft light. You're still here, he whispered. Of course I am, she said. I thought I was dreaming. You're not. You're alive. Thanks to your stubbornness and one last miracle. Jace gave a faint smile. What happened? You gave your last meal to us, she said, voice quiet, and almost died because of it. He tried to laugh, but his chest barely moved. Worth it? You're a fool, she said, smiling through tears. I never said I was smart. The human woman came back with a few supplies and a clipboard. She looked at Rivaka. Leave. Put in an asylum request. You and your daughter can stay under human protection. Your record doesn't matter here. Rivaka stared. You'd accept us? The woman nodded. You're not the first refugee mother we've seen, and you won't be the last. But we rarely see someone like him, giving everything without asking anything in return. Rivaka turned. To Jace, he closed his eyes again, breathing soft and slow. Later that evening, she made a small meal using the supplies the camp offered. Simple bread, dried fruit, warm broth. She brought the bowl to Jace and helped him sit up. Eat, she said gently. Please. He looked at her hand, holding the spoon. This is the first time in weeks someone's fed me, he said. It won't be the last, she replied. He took the spoon slowly and ate. The taste of the food wasn't special, but to Jace, it was the most important meal of his life, because it meant he hadn't just saved them. They had saved him too. That night, Rivaka sat beside him while her daughter slept in a warm bed nearby. She brushed his hair back and whispered, You didn't just give your last meal. You gave us a chance to live, to dream again. And you gave me something I never thought I'd find, Jace said, his voice low. A reason to stay. She rested her head against his shoulder, her hand gently placed over his. Outside the tent, the stars shone brighter than ever, because sometimes, in the darkest places, the smallest kindness can light the whole sky.